Well, in a moment, there will be continuing coverage with my colleague Hugh Edwards, but I'm going to leave you now with some images through the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, who's died today at Balmoral at the age of 96.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service. God help me to make good my vow, and God bless all of you who are willing to share in it.
The longest reigning monarch in British history, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, has died at the age of 96.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong. God help me to make good my vow.
Over the long course of 9 momentous decades, she witnessed social and economic change on a global scale. As Princess Elizabeth of York, she'd come to the throne at the age of 25, following the sudden death of her father, King George VI. During her lifelong reign, the Queen dealt with no fewer than 15 Prime Ministers, including Sir Winston Churchill, Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair and Boris Johnson. As head of the Commonwealth, she became the most travelled monarch in history, as head of state of 15 countries. And Queen's death comes just over a year after the loss of her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, her consort for over 70 years. Over the decades, the Queen was greeted by millions of people worldwide and met her subjects on thousands of engagements in the UK and overseas. And the Queen was last seen by the public in this image taken at Balmoral on Tuesday, inviting Liz Truss to become the new Prime Minister. As the crown passes to King Charles III, the Queen's death will be deeply felt by her family, by the people of the UK and by millions in the Commonwealth and beyond. Earlier this evening, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch in the history of the United Kingdom. and the commanding presence in British public life over a span of 8 decades. She died at Balmoral in Aberdeenshire at the age of 96. The Queen's eldest son, Charles, at the age of 73, has become King Charles III. It was at 6:30 this evening that Buckingham Palace released this formal statement. The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell is with me and will be with me throughout this extended edition of BBC News at 10. And Nick, let's just reflect first on the fact that this news, which came several hours ago, is already, and we feel it, calling ripples of dismay and shock and grief, not just in the UK, but around the world.
Wave upon wave of grief. I think it was Boris Johnson who coined that phrase. It is a moment of profound importance and profound sadness. A moment so many people had hoped somehow would never happen, but of course now it has. Yet it is hard still to take in the sad reality that this reign has ended. I think it is going to take time for the nation to process this. There will be, and there is, a tremendous sense of loss. Many, I think, will find this quite unsettling and disorientating. And we're seeing people are needing to come together there outside Buckingham Palace on this bleak, rainy night in the early autumn. I think people feel the need to be together at this particular moment, seeking comfort from each other, because amid all the other uncertainties that we face as a nation, now our head of state has died. This person who has been in the background to our lives, as we've been saying this afternoon, for most of us throughout all of our lives. There aren't many people who have known anything other than a nation with the Queen as its head of state. She was indeed, as Prime Minister Liz Truss said, the rock on which modern Britain was built. A source of reassurance and stability for so many decades. We saw that during the COVID pandemic. We've seen it so many times. There was something timeless about her. It was Boris Johnson who also said that. And that really is monarchy. There is something timeless about monarchy, an institution that is above politics, that captures the imagination and the affection in a way that no politician can possibly do, representing something beyond itself. And that's what she did for these 7 decades, representing the best of qualities of decency and humility and duty, constant in the ever-changing world that we live in. Pretty much every aspect of our lives has changed since 1952 when she came to the throne, except her, until now. I think history will say that this was one of the most remarkable reigns in the 1,000-year history of the monarchy in these islands, a reign that will be talked about, a queen who will be talked about in the centuries that come. But now the crown has passed. We have a king.
We'll discuss lots of those aspects, Nick, in the next 90 minutes or so. The impact of the reign and, of course, the nature of transition as well and what that means, not just to the royal family, but to the entire country. But for now, Nicholas Witchell, thank you. The death happened at Balmoral, the Queen's cherished estate in Aberdeenshire, where she decided in July that she wanted to spend the summer, as she always did, despite the health problems and despite the mobility problems. But that is where she passed away earlier today. Our Scotland editor, James Cook, is at Balmoral tonight. And I'm imagining, James, that the solemn sense there will echo what happens here in Buckingham Palace, as we saw just a while ago.